Willow Creek Springs presents Healthy Living with your host, Joe Grumbine.
Well, hello and welcome to the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine, and today I have a very special guest. And normally I just jump right in and start letting the guest talk, but today I'm going to do a little talking first. So I have with me a woman that goes by the name Floraina Three Hawk, and maybe she'll explain her name a little as we go along. But I met her very recently. It doesn't seem even possible that that's true, but we're getting ready. We're 9 days away from the Holistic Health Symposium happening at Gardens of Hope, and a couple of months ago, we were doing little interviews with the speakers that are going to be present, and she came up as a speaker and did a little live thing, and I was listening to her. And she was talking about some things that I thought were really important that I never heard anybody talk about. And so that triggered me. I said, wow, this person really has a connection to some things that are important. You know, a lot of times in this world of healing, we have all these, brand new shamans running around and brand new yoga teachers and Reiki masters and all these people that, have these initiations and blessings and titles and cloaks and crowns and all this stuff. But most of them are just a bunch of nothing. And to have somebody talk about something that is so important, I says, wow, you should come out to the garden. So we talked and we thought about, come on, she lives a long way away. So I said, well, she brought part of her crew and came out, and I said, well, we'll share a meal and whatnot. And I said, we can record a podcast episode and we can talk about, the event and all these things. And they came out just about in the middle of the day, and next thing you know, it was 9 o'clock at night. And we had shared so much, just yapping and talking, and I said to myself, wow, there's this is a special, and it wasn't just her, it was her crew. And but I knew at that moment that there was something really special and important about this person in my life. So Floraina, I just here we are finally 2 months later, we're going to do a podcast episode. And we've done so much. I feel like we've worked together for years and years and years. And we have actually done as much work as I've done with other people in years and years and years in a couple of months. So with all that, why don't you introduce yourself and let's tell us a little bit about Floraina Three Hawk.
Thank you so much, Joe. So yes, as you said, my name is Floraina Three Hawk. I am, for lack of better words or titles, I really don't love putting titles on it. I am technically a Native American medicine woman, raised in Navajo culture for the medicine womanship, and I am each. And well, I'm just me. I'm just me here to do a job and trying to do the best I can. Being a part of other people's journeys and helping to be a guide. Kind of always knew I was that weirdo who was gonna be, sitting with people from a very young age and just learning and receiving knowledge as much as possible in my life and being blessed by assisting others. So my life's path is really all about other people, not so much me. So I get a little nervous talking about myself, but
It's all right. It's totally good. I think that sometimes, actually, as well as I know, when you get a little nervous, that means you're in your growth place. And you're working on that thing you need to work on, because that's how we all are. And I've come to find every time I'm like, oh geez, I don't want to do that, I'm like, okay, I guess I got to do that.
I love that. Yeah. Always expanding, always kind of stretching that muscle of discomfort, because that's where we grow. You're exactly right. That's been my biggest thing, is how can I expand on acceptance of being in that kind of public circle when I'm the wallflower that wants to observe everyone.
I hear you. I hear you. It's kind of crazy because, we were just chatting up a little bit before we
Mhm.
started, and it's a strange place. Like, I got brought into this world of helping people at a very, very young age. I had a coma when I was about 18 years old, and I realized at that moment that I had a purpose. And I've spent the rest of my life pursuing that purpose, whatever it is, however it takes place. And it's not always the same, it changes all the time, at least in how you execute it. So when you said, you were raised in and trained in this, it's like that's not something everybody gets to do. Like, I mean, or has to do, if the case may be. So there was an element of you being in the place at the time and going through whatever you needed to go through to put yourself in that place at that time that said, here is this path if you choose it, but then you chose it. So there's a lot of things that went down at an early age, and I'm obviously you're going to share as much or as little as you want, but those are things that, to me, as people are getting to know you, that little bit of backstory is kind of important, because like some people, they're like,
Absolutely.
I want to be. And so they go out and, go get that degree or go get that, find that teacher and get that training, and they want it so bad, they go out and get it. And some people are good that way. And sometimes that's a good way to go for a person. But then some people like it seems you and I are kind of reluctant about it. Like, didn't really ask for any of this. And all the things that have shoved me into the public light, none of them were pleasant. None of them were rewarding in a way that people would consider rewarding, and they all cost an expensive price. And
Mhm.
yet there they are. And you find it almost impossible to say no when presented with this difficult path.
Absolutely. Oh, I can't agree more. Um, I don't mind going into the past and like sharing some of the things that I feel in my own way that were initiated into
Mhm.
life, because I feel like that's the foundation of why I am and who I am and what made me the person I am today. So
Mhm.
I definitely do want to share. I do want to just put out there that there's a little bit of trigger warnings here. So if anyone is listening, please note that my story does involve a lot of trigger warnings. There is a lot of different types of abuse that I went through in every single way that you can imagine. So if that is something that you don't want to hear right in this moment, or feel like you need time before you kind of start listening, please note that I am going to share some of those things, and it is a little bit sensitive when it comes to abuse in many different ways. So I just like to put those warnings out there, Joe,
Well,
before
now
we
you're going to
start
get
talking.
everybody to listen.
Yeah, I mean, it can go either way, but I know for me,
It's good to be warned, at least. Yeah, for
yes,
sure.
those things are important. Um, so if I may start, I simply was born to two very young people, both in their teens, and very unique, lovely people, but they weren't ready for me at all. Right off the bat, they were not together. My mom, biological mom, tried to abort me several times on her own, kind of in many different, really drastic ways. So, and these things were confirmed by conversations with family and also at one point through both parents. So,
Wow.
um, jumping out of cars, stabbing her stomach, like many
My
different ways.
God.
So
Whoa.
very heavy just in the womb, coming into that energetic field of not being wanted. Um, and because that wasn't successful, you know, I was had. And right off the bat, uh, was a very rocky time. I was born early and nobody wanted me. I was in the hospital for months, and a premature child. And coming into the world, it's really weird. And I know a lot of people are going to find it hard to believe,
Who's
but
this? I got somebody working.
no worries.
Of
Um,
course. My God. All right. That's
That's
a little
okay.
better.
So when I was born, I try to explain to some people, or I share this because not everyone's going to receive it well or understand it, but I know and I remember my birth. I remember
Wow.
coming in, and when many people talk about this light that they see at the end of the tunnel type of thing, to me, it wasn't death, um, it was life.
Wow.
So that tunnel provided a path to this life for me. So perhaps maybe I was passing from another life and went straight into this one. It's not 100% clear to me on that part. I know that does happen, but not for everyone.
Hmm.
Um, However, I remember, and I came in. I remembered the sounds, the things. I remember being placed in. At that time I didn't know what it was, but it was an incubator. I was aware that there was nobody really with me, and so I remember those things and being carried when I did finally get out of the hospital. So it goes really far back, like where my awareness was. With that, um, I was tossed around a lot. I didn't have my parents with me. I think they did try for like 1 month or something like of that nature, from what I'm being told. But right away, let go.
Wow.
And I was bounced around. I remember being carried. I can see still to this day different houses and different places that I've described to other people, and like, this is where I was, all that stuff.
Wow.
So after that, to fast forward just a little bit, I was bounced around. I did live in cars with my dad for a little while, and I saw many things. My dad was young, and he was in trouble a lot of the times, doing drugs. Um, I saw everything under the sun there. We literally lived in the back of his car, and so as an infant, finally, I think people from his side kind of came and took me and tried to keep me, but even then, there was a lot of abuse. I lived with an aunt for a little bit, who later on became like my grandma, and then her daughter took me, and her husband was very abusive to me, psychologically, um, abusing me in the mind and physically, hitting and you know torturing me with different things. So a lot of abuse right away.
Wow.
And then the first parts of sexual abuse started when I was 2. So, so young. And I remember the day it happened. Um, I remember everything around it, but I could never see the face for some reason. I blocked that out. And so it was even a day when I was with my dad, and it was one of his friends.
Wow.
So I took that with me, and there was so much around that as a 2-year-old. Caused a lot of issues growing into myself, and from that point, I started veering off towards family and his cousins, and they started taking care of me. But also, there was a lot more psychological abuse, and I started realizing I was seeing things that people did not see.
Huh?
I realized that everybody comes with these strange lights around them. I thought everybody could see it. I didn't know it was different. I would talk about it or talk about people that weren't there, which were people who passed or guides who were telling me things, and I didn't know why other people couldn't see it. I was very confused. And they did really, that was another way of saying like, oh, this kid is crazy or this is not right. And then back then, Catholicism was a huge thing for us. So I was kind of put into place where I was going to church for like 5 days out of the week, and then plus in the choir, adult choir, and like my best friend was a nun. Sister Corazon.
Yes, we had that in common as well. I
Yeah.
had that whole thing too.
Yeah, so Sister Corazon and Father Pedro, like they were who I knew, and I had a lot of questions. I got in trouble constantly because I was constantly questioning the system of Catholicism at a
Uh-huh.
very young age.
Stuff didn't make sense, huh?
It didn't make sense to me. Like they would teach us, they did the whole Bible study, and I understood and I enjoyed a lot of the stories. Some of them
Yeah,
made sense with love, but some of it just wasn't quite right.
yeah.
And I would tell them. I eventually told the sister um, what I seen, and I believe the way the father started believing me is I told him about his father that came in to talk to him, and there would have been no
Wow.
way for me to know things about him. So at that point, they were like, okay, um, this kid's a little strange, but we're gonna help her because my family was more like you're possessed, there's something wrong, like
Right.
yeah, you need to be with the church and all that stuff. So it was something. Um, I was presented with sometimes, them saying that, oh, she's possessed, so they asked the church to bless me into like what they thought was like an exorcism and stuff. And in the beginning, when I would say things, they were like, hey, yeah, you need to be blessed and stuff. So I witnessed, and I get very uncomfortable when I think about this, but I witnessed two adult exorcisms, which to me was already like not allowed. These were not sanctioned by the church
Yeah.
back then. I know now that there's so many permissions that you need to get for this, but they were doing things on their own accord in that
Wow.
city or town. It was a small town, and well, the first one was not so bad. The second one, this man, um, I saw things that I had not witnessed before as a young child. And at this time, I was still about that first one. I think I was 7.
Wow.
Yeah. So kind
The
of
rest of
crazy.
us are playing in the sand with toys and you're watching people torture other people.
Yeah, yeah, it was pretty crazy, and um, I believe that one was a legit, like not with permissions, but they did find something inside that spirit, and that was quite a unique experience. But it did confirm that there's more to all of this and the
Mhm.
spiritual realm and all that because I had so many questions, and this is why they ended up starting to show me and teach me the other parts of the Bible, the other parts of spirituality. So
Mhm.
luckily, the father and that sister were also very spiritual, not just religious. They
Right.
did believe in energy. They did understand that there's more to it.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
city that I lived in when I was younger, called Santa Paula, is very old and haunted as it is. Like everywhere you go, there is just so much energy. But anyways, I'm dragging that. So I fast forward, I started really telling people a lot about what I would see. So I started seeing a lot of ghosts at that time. I was very open channeled, um, and you know, going through bouncing around still and not really being wanted or being a burden on people. Um, my cousin, who I actually started calling mom around 10 years old, started taking care of me the most and really kind of brought me in. But even that was really, really hard for her and hard for me. She had a lot of step kids who became my step brothers and sisters and loved them, but they always made it very clear that I'm not their family or,
Of course.
a lot of things were always said and I was always weird and all this stuff that I was always called. But um, right around, right around, I was just about to enter my real teens. when things changed and there was this change in my guardian's life, and she was with a new person, and this person came in and just really ripped my life apart. I was still very young, and they came in, and the day they came in, they started torturing me with sexual
Wow.
abuse.
Jeez.
And that lasted for about 10 years, for every day of my life in that time frame. I literally would fight every day. And the amount of sexual abuse, mental abuse, and physical abuse was just to no end. I learned not to sleep. I learned very quickly that I had to fight every night, and it was just crazy. So when I sit with people nowadays with stuff like that, like I don't kid when I tell them, I know, and I feel you, I see you, and if I could get through that, I know you can, and I'm here for it. So when I really say, hey, I work with trauma, I understand, and I work with that. So I developed a kind of weird, tough skin when it came to that kind of fight over the next decade. My my abilities to see and talk and feel the other side and entities and guides and all that was growing quite a bit. I got really sick the first time in my life when I was 16 because of all the abuse from this really dirty person. I didn't know I was getting sick, and it turned into cancer. And I had to start going through surgeries. Um, I I had to, like, it just never stopped for another another decade. Like, cancer every or pre-cancer. So it wasn't always full-blown cancer. It was pre-cancer, cancer, different cells, different things. And a few times I had surgery. I'm about to go into my third, and then it just never never stopped because I think of the energy around that. The the body knew something was wrong. So finally had enough of that when I was about 19. I stayed because I was thinking that I was protecting the younger kids, especially my sister. And I regret because I found later that I didn't do a very good job of protecting them. I didn't know. And so that's something that still weighs on me because I found that out later in life, but I'm working with that. And one day he just went a little crazy and tried to kill me, literally.
Oh,
Had me by my neck up against a wall. I remember feeling like I'm losing myself. And pretty much the words, the ways, there was some kind of strange thing that came over him. I don't know what it was, but I knew if I could hang in there, that his younger son would be home soon. So I just had to, like, fight or